Hi, everyone. Let's get on with our discussion for chapter 12. And so now we find out how Ronald got out of prison. So it's June 1995, and the warden calls him down. And Ron explains that there's only two reasons why the warden wants to talk to you. You've either gotten in trouble or there's a death in the family. And so there's some family members he's worried about. Both parents have had strokes, and Diane is on disability. But the warden tells him there's bad news and good news. So he gives him the bad news first. He says, bad news is you're going back to court. Good news is the guy that committed the crime you're doing time for confessed. You're going home tomorrow. And this is just out of the blue. Now he knows that there's testing that's been done and things like that, but this has just been out of the blue. And so the entire, the rest of this day and the next day he's just like, okay, is this for real? Am I getting tricked here? Um so it now plays the waiting game for him. And so the warden turns into um, a nice guy, because now that Ron is leaving the prison, he wants to know about the problem CEOs, the guards who are selling drugs and things like that. He wants info on that. And Ron's like, I'm not going to be your snitch. So he goes back to his bunk. He passes out most of his belongings to the other guys, and he just takes home some soap and a toothbrush that, he's going to continue to need those things. The next day, COs from a North Carolina prison come and get him and drive him back. And they know a little bit about his case. And they say, we heard about your case. Is it true you spent 11 years locked up for something you didn't do? And he says, yeah. And they say, that's messed up. They stop for McDonald's. Um, Unfortunately, they have to keep him locked in handcuffs and things like that. And Ron says, I will never forget that first whiff of McDonald's fries after 11 years. It was always as I remembered it, and yet it had never tasted so good before. So think about that. Um, you know, there's just little things like that we take for granted every day, um, that he didn't get, and he was wrongfully convicted too. And then the COs talk to him a little bit more. We're really sorry for what happened to you. That guy shouldn't have waited so long. Even after the DNA linked him, it still took him 5 hours to confess. That's what I heard. And the other guard calls him, what a sorry SOB. But Ron's not fooled. He knew, he's not surprised by that. He said Poole was not going to step up willingly to take responsibility for the crimes. And so he's got to do one more night in jail, until they can go up in front of a judge. And so he wakes up the next morning, and he's trying to be positive that this is going to happen. Again, he hasn't talked to his lawyers, for verification or anything like that. They just kind of swept him out of Tennessee. So he's hoping this isn't all a trick. And so it's Friday, June 30th, 1995, when all of this goes down. And he's still in handcuffs, and the judge for this case is the same judge at his preliminary hearing where the judge upped the bail, for all of his charges. And so that judge comes back and says you can remove the cuffs from him. His family brought him clothes to change into, a purple shirt and black jeans, which he still has the shirt. And then there are news cameras in the room, and they're all for him. He says, I did not see the women who had said I attacked them, but all he saw were the faces of his family. So I'm not sure if the Jennifer and Mary were there that day. And then the judge says, Mr. Cotton, the charges against you have been dropped. For the first time in a long time, you are walking out of here today a free man. So finally, he has been exonerated. The ADA, Rob Johnson, gives him a full apology, on behalf of the state of North Carolina. And he was not one of the prosecutors from the first or second trial. This is a completely different prosecutor, but he does apologize. And then normally, when you're exonerated like that, they still have to take you in the back, finish processing you out, and then you can leave. But they said we really don't want him to be seen like a convict still. They wanted him to be able to leave through the doors in the courtroom. And so they arranged that with the judge. And then his lawyers, before they leave the courtroom, the lawyers pull him aside for a minute and they say, Ron, it is our great pleasure to end our representation of you today. We've been working on this case for 3 years and we never dreamed it would turn out like this. We wanted to have a private moment with you just to reflect and be grateful for everything that's happened in our careers. You don't see an injustice like this made right against all the odds. And for that was a very meaningful moment for Ron. And the one thing I always liked about Ron that you see throughout the book and through all the letters that they've printed that he has sent to his attorneys, he's always very appreciative of all the work that they do. And so then he is able to walk out a free man that day. And there's some pictures here in the back. Here, this is the professor who helped on his case. This is the DA. Here he is hugging his family. And then this was the last one as he was walking out of the courthouse that day. He's shaking the hand of the professor who helped him. And so remember, that professor and his class did all of that for free, that work for free. And so that is where we have left off with chapter 12. Ronald Cotton is finally exonerated. So there are no extra things to watch for this chapter. The homework for this week, besides reading and annotating the book, is to do a worksheet on the National Registry of Exonerations. So I've got a video and a worksheet that I will explain all of that for you. So that is the next thing that you need to go on to.